What is up guys, Deadset here. In this video we'll go over the Marauder Demon Hunter, as this is the set you receive in Season 10. We'll go over both speed farming and pushing variations. Let's go. Sentries are a key part of the build, mimicking the shots of your selected hatred spender when you fire. Sentries also directly reflect your damage delivery, adding more damage to your skills per sentry dropped. Your overall strategy with the Marauder set is to drop your initial 3 charges of Sentry in key positions to cover the battlefield and proc the chill effect, and then start kiting with devastating cluster arrow shots, dropping the additional 2 sentries from Bombardier's rucksack as the cooldown comes up. You'll maintain hatred through your permanent Vengeance C form, assisted by regular evasive fire shots and pops of the companion active. If there's anything left standing after the initial barrage, reposition smartly with Volt and begin the cycle anew. Sentry is the signature charge-based skill of the build, since each sentry in the field translates into more damage dealt by your own spenders. This mandates the use of both custom engineering as a passive and Bombardier's rucksack as a quiver. To synergize with Cool the Weak and Bayonet the Trapped, as well as to provide additional safety in greater rifts, you'll be using the Cold Rune Polar Station. Try to drop one of the turrets directly on top of the enemy, and spread the other 2 of the initial charges to cover the battlefield in the chilling effect. If the fight is prolonged, continue the strategy with your Bombardier's rucksack charges, but always strive to have 1 turret on top of the biggest threat. Note that in Torments, your clear speed will increase to a point where proccing Cool the Weak through Polar Station is too slow in practice, so you can consider switching to the Spitfire turret for a slight increase of burst. As dictated by the 4-piece bonus of Marauders, turrets will only fire spenders when you do, cutting down the number of spenders you can afford on your skill bar while still managing hatred. For greater rift purposes, Cluster Arrow shines among the competition in the DPS race, and offers 3 distinct rune choices for pushing leaderboards. With the Hellcat Waistguard changes in patch 2.4.3, Cluster Bombs is arguably your strongest and riskiest choice, releasing a mid-range, slow volley of devastating grenades. If you prefer fighting at a longer range, the Physical Shooting Stars and the Cold Maelstrom are still very viable choices. Note that if you run Marauder in Torments, you can swap into Multi-Shot Arsenal, like in the video demonstration, for a fire and forget solution during speed farm. As a final note, remember to adjust elemental damage rolls on gear according to your skill and rune of choice. Fire for Cluster Bombs and Multi-Shot Arsenal, Physical for Shooting Stars, or Cold for Maelstrom. With its troublesome cost of 40 hatred per shot, Cluster Arrow is an expensive beast to maintain. 2 resource-related skills are incorporated into the build to aid in the struggle of hatred management. First up, we have Vengeance. Marauder Demon Hunters achieve permanent uptime of this skill through a cubed Dawn and a modest amount of cooldown reduction. This potent 40% damage buff will also increase hatred regeneration to 10 per second from the Seethe rune, and depending on your cube choices for the armor slot, can reduce incoming damage in half via the Visage of Goons. The second option is to pop the active effect of the Companion skill, which triggers the hatred restoration of the Bat Companion. Keep in mind, however, that the Marauder set puts all companions at your side for the small price of the skill slot. The active pop also nets you the Spider Companion Slow, the Boar Companion Taunt, the Ferret Companion Health Globe Grab, and the Wolf Companion Multiplicative Damage Increase. Thus, treat your companion active not only as a source of hatred, but also as a damage and safety spike. While the protection of the Boar Companion Taunt is nice, it's also temporary, occupying the enemy for merely 5 seconds, and only those in a 20-yard radius around you. It will not be enough to keep you in one piece. For emergency situations, you'll be taking a repositioning tool in the form of Volt, a reliable displacement tool that can take you great distances cheaply with the Tumble rune. Finally, a generator also works its way into the build, while the safer Shooting Stars, Maelstrom and Multi-Shot variations can afford to optimize on resources with the restorative evasive fire focus. The mid-range Cluster Bomb variation will do better with a tanky rune like Hardened. This concludes the overview of the active skills. Now let us look through the passives. Custom Engineering is the dream passive of the Marauder playstyle, doubling the duration of your sentries and increasing their maximum number and initial charges to 3. While their numbers will swell even further with the Bombardier's Rucksack, the ability to skyrocket your damage at the start of every major battle is too good to pass up, especially since transitioning between rift levels resets your sentry count, opening a temporary weakness window in the build. Depending on your spend or rune of choice, you'll either slot Grenadier or Ballistics as your second passive. Grenadier is your go-to passive for cluster bombs, bringing a 10% multiplicative damage increase and increasing the explosion radius by 20%. If you focus on rocket-based skills like shooting stars, it is only natural to pick up the synergy with Ballistics, doubling the effectiveness of rockets, splitting off of cluster arrow, and even giving you a free homing rocket every few attacks. This passive is a sizable multiplicative boost. Note that Ballistics will synergize in a Torment variation as well, considering the rocket-oriented multi-shot arsenal. Steady Aim completes the offensive trio of passives, boosting your damage with a 20% multiplicative increase, a change as of patch 2.4.1, as long as you maintain the generously low requirement of 10 yards between yourself and the enemy. You have a decision-making point for the final passive slot. As arguably the safest of the Demon Hunter sets, Marauder can get away with using a 4th offensive passive in the form of Cool the Weak, amplifying your damage against slowed or chilled enemies by 20%. This potent multiplicative passive gets triggered by Sentry Polar Station and the Spider Companion, so make sure to always have one turret covering the enemy in the chill radius. If you like having a cheat death at your disposal, preferable for short-range cluster bomb setups, Awareness is a free life on a decent 60-second cooldown, coupled with a brief window of safety and life regeneration when triggered. The build incorporates the complete embodiment of the Marauder set, taking all 6 available pieces and opening up the jewelry for strong offensive sets. You'll be trying to reach a 37% CDR breakpoint for permanent uptime of Vengeance, attainable from Paragon points, a flawless royal diamond in the helm, and 3 other items with max CDR rolls, distributed as you see fit, for example on the shoulders, quiver, and one of your rings. Stat-wise, the Marauder set can obtain cluster arrow or multi-shot skill percentage bonuses on the helm and boots, and you should strive to obtain them for the respective build variations. Sentry skill percentage can be obtained on the chest and shoulders, but it's more desirable for rocket-based variations with shooting stars, maelstrom, and multi-shot arsenal. The grenades produced by sentries in the cluster bombs variation do not benefit from Hellcat Waistguard, making their contribution minor compared to your own shots. As a consequence, the chest and shoulder primary rolls are better spent on life percentage and area damage respectively. Not skipping on any of the pieces required to obtain the Marauder 6-piece bonus leaves space for a potent combo in the jewelry, the Bastions of Will set, Focus and Restraint. This ring set adds the impressive 2.25 independent damage multiplier, as long as you alternate between a primary and a spender attack. Thus, learn to weave frequent evasive fire shots to your spender spam. Completing the jewelry, you have a number of options for the next slot. While any well-rolled piece can do the job, your best option would be a Hellfire Amulet, with a helpful 5th passive like Ambush or Awareness. Introduced in patch 2.4, Zoe's Secret Belt is tailored to Marauder set bonuses and offers a unique source of protection, up to 9% damage reduction for every active companion, cutting incoming damage by more than half as a result. Note that this belt is interchangeable with the Hellcat Waistguard in a cluster bombs build. You'll wear one and cube the other. Hellcat Waistguard has an unlisted 50% chance to proc, irrespective of the skill used or unique affix rolled. The belt increases the number of times grenades bounce and deal damage, counting the initial impact as the first bounce, and thus increasing your burst from the get-go. Notably, the final burst is 800% of the base damage, which somewhat lessens the impact of worse belts with lesser bounces, and can even make them preferable for speed farming to lessen the time between a shot and the final burst. This is especially important considering that grenades are very likely to bounce outside of a fight or even outright disappear upon collision with a wall or a similar object. Nevertheless, for endgame pushing, you will be looking for ideal circumstances, open area rifts where the perfect 5-bounce Hellcat waist guards will shine. The general recommendation for the wrist slot are the Wraps of Clarity. These bracers further reduce damage taken by up to 35% for 5 seconds after using a hatred generator. In a rocket-based build, its duration will be similar to that of the Bastions of Will set, creating a rhythm to the buffs that make them easy to maintain. When doing non-threatening content such as Torment Rifts, it is advisable to swap away from the safe choice into a speedrun appropriate bracer like Nemesis Bracers or Warzekian Arm Guards, speeding up your clears with more frequent elites or environment destruction speed boosts respectively. Extending the utility you get out of the Marauder set bonuses, the Bombardier's Rucksack lets you have 2 additional sentries. Unlike the custom engineering passive, these additional charges are not immediately available, but you will have enough time to drop them in any significant fight, and the potential increase of your own damage makes the quiver mandatory for the build. As previously mentioned, in the cluster bombs variation, grenades from sentries do not benefit from Hellcat Waist Guard, making it counterintuitively sensible to reroll the natural sentry bonus to another offense stat like area damage. One of the signature vanilla Demon Hunter crossbows, Manticore, received a facelift back in patch 2.4 to complement Marauder cluster arrow builds for pushing high greater rifts. Besides rolling up to 80% additional cluster arrow damage, it offers the unique property of reducing the skill's resource cost in half, an indispensable bonus with the gluttonous base 40 hatred per shot. When facing the limited scope of Torment difficulties, you can swap into a multi-shot Marauder variation and take Yang's Recurve, whose resource cost reduction unique property will ensure carefree spam of AoE and Vault. In the legendary gems, Bane of the Trapped is a potent source of additional damage, as it is its own multiplier in your total damage calculation. The gem will be procced by Polar Station Chills and Spider Companion Slows, as well as your AI companion, who is usually armed with Thunder Fury. Introduced in Season 4, Bane of the Stricken occupies a firm spot in your jewelry sockets during highest end progression, building up your damage multiplicatively in prolonged fights, and with a level 25 bonus specifically targeting Rift Guardians, this gem is designed to assist AoE heavy builds in 1v1 combat. Cluster arrow builds fare better than most in that regard, so you can gamble on the overall bonus of Bane of the Powerful not only during speed farm, but as far into high tiers as you are willing. Depending on your fighting range, you will adapt your third gem slot to either Protection, the tanky esoteric alteration for cluster bombs, or Pure Damage, the independent multiplier of Zai's Stone of Vengeance for the longer range shooting stars and multi-shot variations. As another note for rocket builds, remember that Sentry range is independent from yours when it comes to Zai damage bonuses, so spread them accordingly and do not get greedy for additional slows. Lastly, in normal rifts, this gem slot should be taken up by Boon of the Hoarder. This high utility gem feeds you practically infinite gold and gives you a massive short-term speed boost while picking it up, automated by a cubed Avarice Band. It can also render you practically invulnerable if you opt to cube Gold Wrap. In Kanai's cube, Dawn reduces Vengeance's cooldown by 65%, enabling permanent uptime with a modest investment into cooldown reduction, an offer that is hard to ignore with Vengeance's damage, resource and protection bonuses. As previously mentioned, you have several options for the armor slot in the cube. In a grenade variation, you'll either have Hellcat Waist Guard or Zoe's Secret in the slot, depending on your worst rolled item. In a rocket variation, you can slot either Visage of Guns or the Cloak of Garwolf. Visage of Guns is a generic protective option, storing the damage reduction bonus from Dark Heart and allowing you to run the resource powerhouse Seethe on your bar. If you have a well-rolled Zoe's Secret, you can opt for the flavorful Cloak of Garwolf. It will cause a minor toughness loss, less than 3% with a perfect 9% Zoe's Secret, but brings more damage and 2 more meat shields in front of the Demon Hunter. As a final note, all of the options listed above will be redundant in Torments. where you can opt for whichever utility bracer you're missing from your equipment, either Nemesis or Warzekians. If you truly feel you need the toughness, you can make the best out of your Boon of the Hoarder and cube a gold wrap, which makes you practically invulnerable during Torment farm. In Greater Rifts, the jewelry slot will be best taken by the pure damage boost of Convention of Elements, whose rotation of elemental bonuses you have to keep under close scrutiny. Once the sequence reaches the relevant element for your spec, you'll enjoy a significant increase to your damage, so try to adopt a strategy of drawing monster attention during the off cycles and major hatred spending during the preferred element cycle. When doing Torment runs, you can substitute Convention of Elements for Every's Band to gain some additional movement speed in a fully optimized setup. This is only advisable once you're comfortable with your potential to one-shot enemies. In the Paragon points, max out movement speed to the 25% cap and spend the rest on dexterity in the core section. Do note that you only have to spend points until the 15% boost from Paragons, as the remaining 10% for the 25% cap are already passively provided by the Ferret Companion. Focus on crit stats and cooldown reduction in offense. Prioritize all resistance, then life percentage and armor in defense, and take resource cost reduction and area damage first in utility. And this is it for the Marauder Demon Hunter 4 Season 10 progression and Greater Rift pushes. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the guide, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my content, talk to me on Twitch and the social media linked below, and I'll see you guys next time.